I just want to welcome everybody to the North Dakota Homeschool Association podcast. I'm Amber Sand. I'm on the board for the NDHSA. And with me today, I have Liz Buck. She is our office administrator. So Liz, in her position, she does a lot of things. But one of the things that she does for the association is field all the calls that come into the office and answers questions that people have. So we thought it would be a fun idea today to go through frequently asked questions that Liz gets in the office and that we see on social media to kind of help people out with those go-to answers for those questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Amber, for this idea. I think it's a great idea to kind of cover those frequently asked questions because you do see really similar questions coming into the office and online. So it's pretty easy to identify some commonly asked questions that people have about homeschooling. Mm-hmm. So the first few questions that I came up with that are frequently asked of me have to do with the statement of intent. And I'll kind of go through those maybe a little quicker. Most of those have pretty simple answers. And then we'll get into some other questions that have a little bit more meat to them. So one of the most asked questions is, what if I can't find my high school diploma? Can I use a college degree? We must have a lot of parents out there that don't keep track of their high school diploma. And actually, I have to admit that I didn't either. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can use if you have a college degree, you can use that, a copy of it. You can also use a transcript from your high school as long as there's a graduation date listed. So not a problem if you can't track down that high school diploma. Mm-hmm. So that's a really common question that I get, probably the most common question, actually. Another common question has to do with the age of submission for the statement of intent. A lot of people have questions, particularly around those early ages that you submit. You know, they have like a 5-year-old or 6-year-old that they're schooling at home, and they don't know if they should submit a statement of intent. And the answer to that is no. The compulsory age of attendance in North Dakota doesn't start until age 7. So we do not advocate sending in a statement of intent prior to that, as it sets a precedence for other homeschool families that are just following the law in your district. And many times school districts aren't super familiar with homeschool law. And so they'll start going, well, I'm getting all these, these other intents from families that have kids with, that are 5 or 6 years old. How come I'm not getting them from other families? So that is not the law. Compulsory attendance age begins at age 7 in North Dakota, and it actually ends at age 16. We do advocate, however, for continuing to submit the statement of intent after age 16. If you're homeschooling until high school graduation, go ahead and keep submitting that statement of intent through graduation. Your statement of intent is your proof that you homeschooled. So you want to keep a copy of that with the date that you submitted. Many times, like after high school graduation, your high schooler will need to prove that they were homeschooled, and your statement of intent is proof that you did that. That's why we advocate continuing to submit all the way through high school graduation. Also, it gets recorded at DPI as a dropout for the state of North Dakota if you don't continue to submit. So just go ahead and keep doing that. I think it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Okay, another question that we get is, how do I opt out of standardized testing? And why would I want to opt out of standardized testing? Mm-hmm. So you opt out of standardized testing. It's really easy. You just use the statement of intent. There's a section that just, if you use a North Dakota Homeschool Association statement of intent, it makes it very clear. You just mark an X on the box that says, I am opting out of testing. You don't need any proof. You don't need anything else if you mark that on your statement of intent. Now, there is another statement of intent out there from the DPI. I believe it makes it a little more fuzzy how you opt out of testing. So we just advocate for, using our statement of intent. You can use any form you want. We've had districts say, oh, well, that's not an approved form. And actually, there isn't an approved form. You can use any form you want. You can make your own form, actually, if you wanted to, as long as it had the correct information that was required to provide by the Century Code. Mm-hmm. But we like our form the best. We just stick to what is required by the law, nothing more, and we keep it really simple. So you just opt out of testing right there on the statement of intent. Mm-hmm. Why would I want to opt out of testing? So I did get asked that recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good answer to that is, why would we want the public school to test our children when we're the ones choosing the curriculum, doing the teaching, overseeing the education of our child? That public school really has no say in any, there's required subjects in elementary school, but aside from that, the public school is not involved in your homeschool at all. So
Mm-hmm.
why would we want them to test our students? And even more than that, if our student were to be in a certain percentile, a lower percentile for any of the domains, then the public school would have to get involved. And you might have to have, like a monitor that oversees your education, that kind of thing. So I would just advocate for like avoiding that altogether. You can test your student yourself.
Right.
Most of the standardized tests are available for homeschoolers, a lot of the more popularly used ones. One of the good things that came out of 2020 was that a lot of these standardized tests became available online without a proctor.
Mm-hmm.
So they became really widely available to everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
do it yourself, and whether or not you test your child, that's really a personal
Right.
philosophy. If you really are a big believer in that, I think there could be some value in that. Other people don't see a lot of value in that. So it's really up to you as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next question. And this is another one that I get really frequently. People are wondering, why hasn't the school responded to my statement of intent? Can I start homeschooling? Like, why
Right.
haven't they given me the thumbs up? Well, most public schools probably aren't going to say anything. They won't probably respond to your statement. We've been in a few different districts in North Dakota. I don't think I've ever heard back from the public school.
Mm-mm.
So this question kind of arises out of a philosophy that the school is approving your choice
Right.
to homeschool or to not homeschool. And that's not what the statement of intent is. You're not asking for permission to homeschool. You are asking, or you are telling them of your intent to homeschool. So
Right.
that's a totally different philosophy of why you're submitting that statement of intent. So you may not hear anything from the school district. Some schools send out like a letter saying that they received your statement of intent, and they offer some information about services that you can use as a homeschooler, that sort of thing. But to
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge, most districts don't do that. So
If you really want confirmation that it's been received by the school, you can send it. I forget which kind of mail it is, registered or certified, whichever one they have to sign for. And then you'll know that they
yeah,
received it.
good point. And you don't have to do that, but if you want
Oh,
that confirmation, or you can physically turn it in yourself too, which
right.
is what we usually do.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, you can. That was actually one of the other questions that I've gotten. Does it have to go certified mail? How can I send? Who do I send it to, and how can I send it in? So first of all, the North Dakota Homeschool Association does not get the statement of intent. So this year, more than any other year, for some reason, we were getting a lot of statements of intents. I don't know why, from various parts of the state this year. And so we do not, hopefully people understand, we're not a regulating body of any kind. We're just here to support homeschoolers in the state. We don't keep any records of homeschoolers. So your statement of intent goes to the superintendent of your school district. If you live in like a rural area like we do, with a small town school, most of the time those small schools are their own district. So you'll have to verify that, figure out who your district is before you turn it in. You can email it. You can call the school and get an email address of a superintendent to send it in. Excuse me. You can mail it. You can take it in by in person. It's totally up to you, however you do that.
Mhm.
Another question that we see is, people asking if they need to use a certified copy of your child's identity, or is a copy just a regular copy? Okay, a regular copy is just fine. And usually that's a copy of their birth certificate. If your student has been a student at that school district in the past, they're probably going to have those records on hand at the school, and you can mark the box saying that it's on
Right.
file at the school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that the same goes for the immunization record. If they have been a student there and nothing has changed, you can mark that it's on file at the school and nothing has changed. We do have a form on our website for immunizations. You can use the form like from your doctor's office if you want, or you can print off the form from our website. The immunization form is the same as the exemption form. So if you are exempting out of vaccines, you just print out that form, you pick the code that you're using to exempt. They're at the bottom, listed at the bottom, and you just fill it in the correct column as you go down the different vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is the deadline to submit a statement of intent? Sometimes parents freak out if school has started in their school district and they haven't gotten the statement of intent in. And actually, there is no deadline. How the Century Code reads is it has to be submitted within 5 days of the start of your homeschooling school year. Since the school doesn't actually know when the start of your school year is, that's kind of a moot point. You determine that. Just get it in within 5 days of the start of your school year.
Have you ever had issues, Liz, that since you've been in the office with anybody complaining about being accused of truancy if they don't submit it when the school starts because they're just wondering where your kids are if you had them in public school before?
Yeah, we had a district, I believe, on the west side of the state that was sending out letters. This was like last year or the year before, saying, telling homeschooling parents that there was a deadline of a certain date to submit the statement of intent by. So that actually ties into another question that I was going to address later. What happens if I have trouble with the school district? So that's partially why we exist too. You know, many times these issues come up with the school districts, not because they're trying to be nasty. You know, maybe sometimes there's some of that, but most of the time it's just coming out of a true like ignorance of homeschooling law. This public schools just simply are not informed about what this law actually says. Some of the administrators have been really great. They'll reach out to me and they'll say, hey, you know what? I don't understand this. Can you explain the law to me a little bit better? And we really appreciate those administrators for doing that. But most of the time, they're not trying to cause trouble. They just simply don't know the law. Right. So you can always reach out to us if you have any trouble. We can't give legal advice, obviously, but we can help. We can run some interference with public schools. We can send an email. We can get our homeschool legal defense attorney involved if need be. So there's a number of ways that we can help you with that. So that's another reason that we are here, is to help you with the school districts. Okay, so in the last question that I have, I think I got to them all, about the statement of intent. I just have one more. If I put my student at a certain grade level on the statement of intent, is it okay to use a different grade level for their subjects throughout the year? And that is yes, that's totally okay. You're not committed to stay at if you put grade 3 on the statement of intent and your student is working at a 5th grade level for math and a 2nd grade level for reading, totally okay. You're not committed to stay there. I've also had another person recently ask, well, what if I use the same grade level 2 years in a row? Will I get in trouble? No. The parent determines the grade level. The homeschooling parent determines the grade level in North Dakota. So you are completely within your scope of the law to do that. One thing I will say that it is, if you put your kids back in public school, the school does have a right at that point or if you put them in public school for the first time after you've been homeschooling, the school does have a right to look at some of the things that you were doing as you homeschool. They can, ask you what subjects you covered and that sort of thing. They can placement test your student. They don't have to take your word for it, what grade level that you say they're at. So you kind of, once you go back into public school or go to public school, you do have to play by their rules at that point. As long as you're homeschooling, you're in charge of their grade level. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up the statement of intent questions. So I'll just go on to some of the other frequently asked questions that we see. So one of the big ones is, how do I choose curriculum? And I wish I had like a super fail-safe way to pick the best curriculum that will make your kids ace their ACT tests and be perfect, and nothing exists like that. So I've heard it said that we're really in the golden age of curriculum, which is really true, because there's just so much out there to choose from. It can be really overwhelming for parents. So that's a really common question that parents will call and just say, I have no idea what to use. Can you help me? So lots of times what I say in those cases is, if you know like a veteran homeschool parent or somebody that's been homeschooling for a little while, talk to them about what has worked. Lots of times what works for them might work for you. And if it doesn't, then you'll kind of have an idea of why you didn't like something and you'll be able to kind of go from there. So that's probably the best advice that I have for choosing curriculum. Another thing you can go do is go onto the website that we have, ndhsa.org. And you can go to the Homeschooling Help Center right at the top of the website, and there's a drop down, and one of the drop downs is curriculum help.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on that, you'll see a PDF that has ice cream cones on it, and it goes through the different kinds of education styles. There's 5 of them, and it's a super simple look at the different styles of education. You
Mm-hmm.
can read through them and go, well, I feel like I might be traditional, or I might be Charlotte Mason, or whatever you are, whatever kind of stands out to you. It'll give you some ideas of curriculum companies that go with that style. So that's another way that you can kind of start to narrow down options.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of times when parents are pulling a student out of public school in particular, they want something that's already done for them, and they don't want to have to think about it because they don't have the confidence. They don't feel like they know what they're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of times they will go with like an online curriculum, and those are great. They can be useful. I think personally, this is my opinion. You can take it with a grain of salt. I think it robs families of a lot of the joy of homeschooling to
Mm-hmm.
go with an all online curriculum. I mean, I think it has its place for sure, but for the most part, especially for like kids younger than 4th grade, I would not recommend an all online curriculum. Your
Right.
school day can take like an hour, really, like of formal academic time. Why would you need to use the computer for that when they would benefit so much more with that one-on-one time with you?
Right.
So, as far as like open and go curriculum, there's a lot of good options out there. We have some listed on our website under curriculum help. And then if you go to the open and go list, you can click through those and kind of look at some of those options. We do have a list of the online, kind of the more popular online curriculum providers too. Again, too, you can like use a hybrid. Like
Mm-hmm.
we oftentimes would use online for harder subjects like math, especially when my kids got into like high school level, and then use regular curriculum for the rest of our homeschooling. So do
Right.
what works for you.
Yeah, you can mix it up. And also, I'll just put in a plug here for the convention because we have lots of curriculum options there we have a used book sale the night before the convention starts where people have an opportunity to buy used books. And then we have lots of vendors in the vendor hall that have curriculum. But we also have something called the free table, which is great, where a lot of, homeschool moms and dads will bring their things that they've used for years and set them on the table to bless somebody else. So those are nice options for people to comb through when they're at the convention.
Right. And you feel a lot better about maybe discarding a curriculum that's not working for you if you haven't spent like a ton of money on it
Right.
too. So
Right.
um that actually is a great segue into one of my next questions. And that I get is that people will often ask me, is homeschooling expensive?
Sure.
So I will lots of times reference that used book sale at the convention and our free table as ways that people can save money homeschooling. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to spend a lot of money homeschooling. I usually say, maybe a good rule of thumb is to spend maybe a couple $100s per student at least on your education. You want to set aside at least some money for them,
Mm-hmm.
for your education expenses. It's probably not going to be 100% free. If you can't do that, there are ways to really decrease the costs, like that used book sale and the free table. Those are good options. You can borrow curriculum from friends. There's curriculum that is free online, like free printables, especially for like younger kids
Mm-hmm.
online that you can access.
Right. And a lot
What
of
else? There's a
support groups have lending libraries. I know that Bismarck does.
right.
And then we
Yep,
also
Bismarck
have a
has a
small
good
one.
library.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know if other support groups do. I just know that Bismarck has a big one. And then we have a small one, like a really small one. There was another
Yeah,
lady that I spoke to once and theirs had one too. So check with your local support group and kind of see if they have one.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't have to be super expensive. In fact, the research shows that homeschooling success rates are not tied to the socioeconomic status of the family. So that just means that no matter how little money you really have going into this, it doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of success
Right.
homeschooling. So anyway, but yes, I know you do want to set some money aside probably for your school.
Hmm.
Um, so one question, I actually got this question today, and I don't think it's like a super common one. I just thought it was an interesting one. A mom asked me, "Is homeschooling hard?" And it kind of made me stop. I was like, "Oh, wow." I go, "That's a really loaded question." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what? It is hard, but I go, there's what is worth doing that isn't hard? I mean, it's if you're going to do it well, it's going to probably be hard.
Hmm.
So there's ways that you can make it easy,
Right.
but it is a lifestyle that not everybody chooses because
Right.
of that. You do have to make some sacrifices. You're making sacrifices to your financial life. You're making sacrifices to your freedom. Like as a parent, you're going to have a lot less time to just do what you want.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there's some hard to it for sure. Is it worth it? Amber, is it worth it?
Definitely worth it. But I've
It's
had people ask
definitely
me
worth
that
it.
question a lot, like how hard is it? And I say the same thing, like, yeah, it's hard. There's lots of days you're gonna
Yeah,
want to put them on the yellow bus. Like you
yeah,
just think about giving up a
right,
lot because it is hard. And
right.
it
Absolutely.
it helps you in your sanctification process.
Absolutely. And I think I was just going to say, as a believer, we believe that we do have a spiritual enemy out there, and that enemy will be hell bent on making sure
Right.
that you don't continue this process of discipling and homeschooling your student.
Hmm.
It's not, he doesn't want that at all. And so you are going to see some attacks spiritually. You're going to have some discouraging days. You're going to wonder if you're ever going to see fruit.
Right.
Just, I have to tell a personal story. Just this last week, we have a pear tree in our yard, and
Hmm.
my parents planted it probably close to 30 years ago. And the other day I was somewhere else, and my 17-year or 18-year-old son FaceTimed me and he goes, "Mom, I gotta show you this." And he turned the camera, and our tree is loaded with pears, like loaded
Oh,
with pears.
yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh my word, that is so exciting." And we have no
Right.
idea why after 30 years it finally decided to bear fruit. But I got to
Hmm.
thinking about that, and I'm like, that's a lot like homeschooling.
Right.
Things take time to see fruit.
Hmm.
And, many times I think it's so sad that homeschooling, lots of times homeschoolers give up right before the high school years. The high
Hmm.
school homeschool is too scary, so they'll just decide to send their student to high school at the public school, which is so sad to me because really those are the years that you see the fruit.
Right.
Finally, you're finally seeing your students that can have great conversations with you and work really independently and manage their time really well. And gosh, you're really missing out on like such a season of seeing fruit when you decide to not homeschool all the way through. So
Hmm.
just my little plug there for homeschooling high school.
Right. And it is
Um,
really rewarding.
okay.
I mean, I can agree with Liz
Yeah,
there.
it is. Right, right. But actually high school has been my favorite years to homeschool. Like I think the little years are super precious. Like
Mhm.
the memories that make me cry are when they were little,
Yeah.
especially like learning to read and like all of those hard years, of slogging through all of that. And plus, I had one that had a little trouble with reading. And, when I look back at all of the work we did and all the hard stuff we went through together, and like, I'm so proud of my kids now and how far they've come. And it's
Hmm.
just, I like wouldn't trade this life for anything.
Right. Right.
So I get a lot of questions about how many hours per day and how many days per year we need to homeschool. And people are sometimes a little bit freaked out about that 4 hour a day requirement. So the law, Century Code does say 4 hours of instruction, 175 days per year. And I always have to look at my little sticky note I have on my board because I always get this wrong. I don't know
Okay.
why. It's July 1st through June 30th of the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I always flip those around. Anyway, so July 1st through June 30th of the next year. So
Mm-hmm.
that is what constitutes a school year in North Dakota. So 175 days within those dates.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we have to, with our 7-year-old, sit at a desk for 4 hours and do math and history and reading and science? Amber, can you answer that question?
No, you don't. It's not going
No,
to take you that long, and you won't have any trouble reaching that
no,
requirement because you're doing
no,
learning activities all throughout the day and different things that you do, and you do field trips and
absolutely.
you do other things that are considered education. So don't worry.
Well, and I personally think when kids are little like that, they're learning a lot through play. And so you can, I mean, to me, I don't get too super bent on counting any of those hours, like tracking them.
Right.
Especially when they're little like that.
Mhm.
It's going to look a lot less, it'll look more like maybe 1 hour of actual school time per day when they're little, I would say, and I would constitute little as fourth grade and under.
Mhm.
So like maybe an hour and a half of actual school, formal academic time, and then that the rest of that time will look like Amber said, doing other learning activities, going to the library, going on nature walks, reading
Even
books
playing
together,
grocery store
playing.
and reading out loud, and if
Yeah,
they're little like that, that's a really
awesome.
good way for them to learn.
Absolutely. Baking together. Yeah. So, and then after, after fourth grade, there's a little bit of a transition there that we found. And, you're kind of increasing that academic time, probably still not doing that solid 4 hours. Definitely when you get to high school, it's probably going to take 4 hours to get through that material. I mean,
Hmm.
I would say on average, it'll
Right.
it'll take that full 4 hours. So that's just what we've experienced. Now, do you have to track it? Now, I personally, full disclosure, like have never tracked hours at my house. Some people do. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. Chances are nobody will ever ask for it. Nobody will ever wonder if you did 4 hours on, September 12th. Nobody will ever ask you to provide that information. You can totally do it. Like
Hmm.
I think there's some value in it, especially, like if you're getting into high school and you're tracking, you're a little bit more concrete about wanting to track how many credit hours your student is doing.
Right.
Fine. I think that would be fine if you wanted to track that. You don't have to, it's kind of up to you.
Right.
Um, that also brings up another point that I was thinking about too is keeping records. A
Hmm.
lot of homeschoolers aren't aware that we are required to keep records
Right.
of our homeschool. And lots of times people don't know what that involves. We usually just say keep a sample of their work for
Hmm.
each subject from beginning, middle, and end of the year. Keep any tests that are pertinent. Like if you do a standardized test, you might want to keep copies of that.
Right.
Um, Personally, I think it's great to keep a list of books that you read that year. I think that's really helpful information to remember. Did we read Little House in the Big Woods or did we not? I can't remember.
Right.
So just like keep track of that. Maybe write some notes for yourself about like what went well, what you want to improve next
Mhm.
year. Again, is anybody going to ask you for those records? Probably not,
Not.
but we are required to keep some records. The law doesn't really specify what kind of records we need to keep. If we do enroll our kids in public school, the public school can ask to see records. They're
Right.
they're within their legal right to do that. So
Hmm.
you want to have that at the back of your mind, especially if you think, well, I might go back to public school or go to public school in the future. So,
Right. And I
do
think,
you have anything
uh,
that you add?
well, Teresa
For,
used this in her getting started, and I would think that she still does. She just kind of gave an example of what she did, which I modeled my own record keeping after that. So every year I just make like a little printout with their picture and the school year and the subjects that they did, and then I put any co-op activities that they did or any extracurriculars on there. And then I keep a sample, like you said. I'll pull like
Mhm,
a quiz out or like an essay that they wrote, and then I keep that with their statement of intent inside of a file folder with their
mhm.
name or whatever.
That's awesome. And yes, statement of intent. I forgot to add that. I love the idea of putting a little picture on there just to see as they grow,
It's fun to
how they
watch them grow
change.
up.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fun. I like that. So it's really up to you as a parent, like what you want to include in that. You don't have to keep everything for sure. I
Right.
would hold on to it. I just had a parent ask me not so long ago about like, how long do I have to hold on to all this stuff?
Hmm.
Well, for sure you want to hang on to that transcript,
Right.
if your student ever needs that. We do have homeschoolers that have graduated in North Dakota and come back like 10 years later, 15 years later, and their parent has not issued them an actual diploma and has not written a transcript for them. And it's so sad because there's
It's
really
not
not
good
a
for
lot.
them. Yeah.
It's terrible. It's so terrible. I feel so sorry for these kids. So you just think about your kids, think about what they're going to need, try to keep those things that you think they might need in the future.
Right. And like keep it in a safe place. Like if you don't, I mean, we do ours
Hmm.
digitally, so we pay us the service through the HSLDA that does it. Which so
Hmm.
they always have a copy of it, but I print it too and I keep it in we call it a burn box, our fire
Hmm.
box in case we had a
Yeah,
fire.
that's a great idea. Actually, I might start doing that. I just have it I have their transcript online, but like I just have
Hmm.
records in a drawer, but that's a really good idea. I like that.
Hmm.
Um, Another question that I get is how do I pull a student that's currently in public school out to homeschool? And is it possible to do that mid-year? Yes, absolutely. You can pull your student out anytime that you want. You do have to be aware there is a 5 day waiting period by law, and that's a calendar day waiting period, not school days. So, if it falls over a weekend, you can count those days.
Hmm.
Also, we always say, like, if there's an issue of mental health things
Right.
going on or
Or
bullying,
bullying.
just get them out. Like, don't
Hmm.
worry about it, just get them out. So,
Right.
and we can help you navigate that if you have trouble. Um, so, yes, you can pull them out. It used to be a 2 week waiting period. We got that down to 5 days. This was like two legislatures ago, I
Right.
believe.
Hmm.
And the reason behind that, initially, the 2 week period was that was how long it took to get like correspondence
Curriculum.
materials, curriculum
Hmm.
by mail. So that was kind of an antiquated law. We
Hmm.
also wanted a little bit of a waiting period built in there to like if parents are super angry at the school and they don't so that they don't make a super rash decision and then regret it later. So that's why that 5 days is in there.
Right.
So um
How about with
okay.
an IEP, Liz? Do you want to talk about that a little bit if a child has a
Yeah, so yeah, and parents will ask, can I homeschool if I have an IEP, if I have special needs? Absolutely, you can. In fact, homeschooling is such a great fit if your
Mhm.
student has special needs because who knows your student better than you? Nobody,
Right.
and nobody loves your student better than you. So,
Hmm.
we do have a special needs coordinator who has visited with you before on a previous podcast, and she just is so amazing. I can't really say enough good things about Lori. She will help you navigate whether or not should I keep this IEP? And if I do, what does that entail? So, if you do keep the IEP, you're going to have some additional paperwork that you'll have to do, submitting progress reports like 3 times a year,
Right.
outside of just your regular statement of intent. But
Hmm.
yes, it's very possible to homeschool with special needs students.
Yes.
Um, So I think that covers pulling a student out. So you just get that statement of intent to the school
Hmm.
from the day you turn it in. It's 5 days. Again, if there's mental health issues, bullying issues, just get them out. Don't worry about that 5 days. But typically, you'd want to follow the 5 day period. And then from that point on, you are good to go.
Hmm.
Um, okay. This next question I get is a very broad question, and I could talk for a very long time. So I'm really not going to do that. I plan on doing another Facebook Live and a YouTube on homeschooling high school in the near future. So we'll get into a lot of depth when we do that. So I'm just gonna go over like a very like flyover view of homeschooling high school.
Okay.
So when you homeschool high school, the main thing is that you're going to want to keep a transcript starting in ninth grade.
Hmm.
You'll want to keep track of credits, and that's really not as scary as it sounds. We usually just say, it's a pretty simple method. If it's a class that lasts a year, it's
Hmm.
1 credit. If it's a class that lasts a semester, it's half a credit. We think that's a good rule of thumb just because, homeschoolers aren't sitting in a classroom logging hours like you would be in public school.
Hmm.
So that works pretty well. Um, what we advocate for using is the DPI graduation worksheet. And if you go onto our website, on the high school page, if you scroll down a little bit on that page, we mention a part about the DPI graduation worksheet, and it's linked there. So if you
Mm-hmm.
click on that link, it should come up and you can print it. And that's what we use to track credit. So does that mean that the DPI is in charge of our high school? No, it doesn't. It's just a good guideline to use as we're tracking credits to make sure that our students get those minimum core requirements that
Mm-hmm.
public schoolers have. And don't we want to like meet or exceed the standards in the public schools? Yes, most of us do want to do that. We know that we're providing a better education than most public schools can give for our students, and we want to reflect that in the transcript. So,
Mm-hmm.
just following that DPI graduation worksheet is a great idea. That being said, you do have some freedom with that. You can move things around. You can title things the way that you want. You can really
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot of freedom with that.
You can take
There's a lot of,
tests, you can take dual
you can
credit.
take, yep,
You can reach out
absolutely.
to
Yep.
the college and see like what do they want from you. If you
Yep.
know your student's going to go to college and you know which colleges they're interested in, ask them, what do you want to see on their transcript? That'll help you a lot too when you're planning.
Absolutely. I think in an ideal situation, you'll narrow that college down. We've never been able to do that at our house, but yes, I think that's ideally a great idea. Like if you can
Mhm.
narrow it down that sophomore year or even
Right.
before, this is the school we want to go to, and then be in contact with them.
Mhm.
I think that's a great idea. Um, so there's a lot of transcript making software out there online that makes it super easy. I've always liked academicrecords.net. That's usually what we've gravitated toward. There's
Mhm.
fast transcripts.
Yep.
I think you said you use HSLDA.
They
Is that
use
what you
fast
said?
transcripts. That's the
Oh, they
service.
do. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have like a vast experience with different kinds of transcript companies, but most of them don't make you pay until you like actually print it out or need it transferred somewhere, correct?
I think we paid for a lifetime subscription to fast transcripts because we thought
Okay.
it was cheaper with the amount of kids that we had. So we don't pay anything
Okay.
anymore. Maybe that's something they don't do anymore. That was a long time ago,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I'm not
I thought
sure.
I looked into fast transcripts not so long ago because we were making a little bit of a change and it looked like you almost had to pay like monthly, even
Mm,
if you weren't. But I don't know for sure how that works. I don't know. You'd have to check into it. I always liked academicrecords.net because they didn't make you pay until you actually needed your transcript sent somewhere. And sometimes like colleges will require that your transcript come from a third party. So that third party is lots of times called Parchment. And that parchment is linked already to academicrecords.net. So that makes that process really easy. You just
mhm.
connect with Parchment and it sends your transcript for you. Sometimes colleges don't require that. Sometimes they'll accept it from the parent, and not ask for any additional documentation or coming through or be notarized. I've heard that too. Sometimes colleges will require a notarized transcript. So different colleges have different ways of dealing with that. So
Great. And you can ask them, especially if you want to build your own. If you want to build your own
mhm,
transcript, reach out to the registrar. Would it be the registrar? I think it is. And you ask them,
probably.
how do you want the transcript to look? What would look professional to you or whatever. I mean, even
Mhm,
before, if you have a friend that works at a college, you could ask them, but you
mhm,
could, if you want to build your own, you can.
mhm. Yes. Right. But definitely you want to have that record for your student because they're probably going to need it for something in the future.
Right.
Um, so using the graduation worksheet is really a helpful tool, making your transcript, uh, keeping track of your credits. Those are all part of homeschooling high school. I think that's just kind of the gist. Can you think of any like major things that I missed about homeschooling high school?
Um, I guess the North Dakota studies thing for
Oh,
elementary
right.
to
Okay.
make sure that you do that.
Yeah. So there are some subjects I didn't really get to that yet. There are subjects that are required by law to to provide for our student. You can find them on ndhsa.org. Again, you go to the Homeschooling Help Center, and then you'll see the drop down that says North Dakota law and subject requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So if you click on there, there's a listing exactly how it comes out of the century code. There's yearly requirements like, science, math, a language arts, a social studies, and physical education, health. And then there's other subjects that just need to be touched on prior to 8th grade. Mm-hmm. North Dakota Studies is kind of it's its own kind of category because it's really the only subject where the law specifies what you should teach.
Right.
Other than North Dakota Studies, I mean, it's pretty open to the interpretation of the parent. But North Dakota Studies, they do have a list of things that they want you to cover. And those things are, North Dakota geography, agriculture, Native American history. Mm-hmm. And parents freak out a little bit sometimes about how to fulfill these requirements. And really, it's very much up to the parent how to do that. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you what we did, and maybe you can add to what you did. Mm-hmm. But one of the years that we had to do North Dakota Studies, I felt like I totally knocked it out of the park. We did a really good job. What we did is we just made it a fun year of field trips. It was the year that my youngest was 4th grade. So we went to Fort Mandan in Washburn. We went to Fort Lincoln in Mandan. We went to the Indian Mounds. We went to the Heritage Center. I think we went to Falkirk Mine at that time. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, we read some living history books. We read a book, that series of famous Americans when they were young. I think that's what it's called. They have one on Teddy Roosevelt. That's awesome, especially if you have boys. I loved that one. They had one on Sitting Bull that we did, and they had one on Sakakawea. The other thing that we did, we're from a super small town that I grew up in and my dad grew up in, and I just really didn't know much about the history of the town. So we went to the public library and actually got some historical records on the founding of our town. And we found out some really cool stuff, like different things that had happened during Prohibition, and and that the town had been founded by a group of Jewish immigrants, and it was really interesting. And there was a big shootout in the 1920s, and we both really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. So that can be all part of that. Just have fun with it. I mean, really, it's a subject that you can have a lot of fun with. And you can purchase, Knight Publishing does have a curriculum that they have printed in the past. Sometimes it's hard to get a hold of. There is one that you can get through the state. If you just do a Google search of North Dakota study curriculum, something like that, it should come up. I just looked it up the other day. You can use a curriculum. I think it's a lot more fun to use it as a time to do field trips and read fun books and whatever. I don't know. Amber, do you want to add anything to that?
We did something really similar, or we do something really similar when our kids are young. We do a lot of field trips, especially the one at Fort Lincoln that's right outside of Mandan, because they do living history, and that's just super fun, I think. And so we did that. We went to Washburn. We did the Teddy Roosevelt talk at the Medora. And that the kids absolutely loved that. And the kids were super excited because he told us that we had done more than our patriotic duty by having more than 4 children. And he gave them a teddy bear. So they were very excited about that. We did it that way. Plus we live on a farm. So we did a lot of agriculture through that, but also the soil conservation offers a lot of stuff in our area where you can go and learn how to graft trees. Awesome. You can learn how to, start different seedlings, or they do different things like that. So we took advantage of that.
That's a great idea.
But it was fun when they were little. When they were in high school, I did do a curriculum. I did Laura Knight's curriculum, and it was fun. We made it fun, but I mean, not that Laura's...
It's good. I mean, there's a lot of good information in the curriculum.
It's got a lot of good information. Yeah. But we did fun stuff like outdoors with it instead of just reading. So,
right. That's good. And I like how we claim Teddy Roosevelt as our own, but he's actually not from North Dakota. But
he really liked North Dakota.
He loved North Dakota. We're going to totally claim him.
Yeah.
He'll probably be the only president that we can really claim as our own.
Probably.
So again, that was just like a really big overview of high school and some of the subject requirements. We could talk about that a lot longer, but hopefully that gives you some good ideas.
Mhm.
Question that we get fairly often is, can a single parent homeschool? Yes, absolutely. Don't feel like you have to homeschool traditional school hours. You don't have to sit there with your student from 8 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. You
Mhm.
can make your homeschool work for you. It doesn't have to be, in fact, I advocate not it for it not being like a repeat of what's happening in the public school. That's a recipe for burnout for you if you try to replicate public school. So don't do that.
Mhm.
There's a book by Nikki Truesdell that's called Anyone Can Homeschool.
Mhm.
And she talks about her experience of having had a single mom that homeschooled her who was actually homeless for a time.
Right.
Um, Crazy, like really, really
Mhm.
crazy story and so inspiring. And then
Mhm.
Nikki went on to go homeschool her own students and was single for a time. And
Right.
so really against all odds, they homeschooled and did it very successfully. And so she has some great insight into how to homeschool when you're a single parent and
Mhm.
facing all kinds of different adversities.
Right.
Um, so, can a grandparent help homeschool? That's another question that we see. Yes, they can. So, HSLDA has given us the guideline that as long as a parent is overseeing the curriculum,
Mhm.
and probably purchasing the curriculum and in charge of that and doing more than half of the total teaching time, you can get help from a grandparent. And that would be a great person to get help from. And you're okay to do that. Can I pay someone else to homeschool my student? No, that's probably not a legal form of schooling in North Dakota, not yet. In North Dakota, some people don't know this. We really only have three kinds of schools. Now they did add a fourth charter, like a type of charter school that's really a public school, another public school option. But it's
Mhm.
public school, private school, and homeschooling. So it has to fit into one of those categories. So if you are trying to do a situation where you have like a micro school and you're getting some parents together and you're hiring somebody to do the teaching, that's actually not a legal form of school in North Dakota, unfortunately. So
Yet.
we
Yet.
are probably moving toward that. We did
Mhm.
have a micro school bill that got very close to passing
Right.
this last legislature. So I look for that to pass in the future at some
Mhm.
point. And I think it would be good. I think it would open up lots of
Option.
opportunities.
Mhm.
Yeah, for even just currently homeschooling families, if they wanted to make some additional income
Mhm.
and do some more teaching of kids in their area, I think that'd be great.
Right.
Um, let's see. I already addressed what to do if you have trouble with the public school. That is something we can help. We
Mhm.
also advocate for you having a membership with HSLDA.
Mhm.
That's something that we've had every single year that we've homeschooled. It's factored into our homeschooling budget every year.
Mhm.
Um, it's just good insurance. That's a group
Right.
of attorneys that will represent you if you have any legal troubles as you homeschool. I don't think there was one time I had a question because the school was giving me some trouble about participating in sports at one time, which was
Mhm.
weird because we never had any trouble. But
Yeah.
yeah, so one time I consulted with them, but I've never really actually needed it. How about you, Amber?
I have called them a couple times because our school district in the past has been problematic. We had a few issues when I was the support group leader that I called on behalf of some people just to get some advice. We had some issues where they were telling the kids that the drama program was full and it wasn't full. And, like, how do we navigate that? And what do
Good
we
try.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was one, especially with a special needs child, where this was when you could not opt out of testing, and she fell below the 30th percentile. She has severe learning disabilities. And so the school got really involved and threatened the mother, brought the mother in by herself. Um, and that was a situation where I really wanted them to call the HSLDA and they did not. And she ended up going back into the public school because she was already there for 4 hours a day at that
Mm,
point. So it was a
right.
little heartbreaking, but what do you do? You know?
Right. And, I don't think a lot of people know that North Dakota has one of the most restrictive special needs
Mhm.
homeschooling laws in the country.
Right,
So don't navigate it alone. That's why
right.
we have Lori to help you. That's why we, ask that you get a membership to HSLDA for them to help you. So yeah, don't try to do that alone. It's kind of tricky for sure.
It is because it's
Um,
hard to understand. And so I think
mhm,
that that's why it's a good option to opt out of testing now, because you can still test
mhm.
your child if you want, but you don't have to worry about that issue.
And we're not saying like you can't be excellent academically as a homeschooler and like we're trying to hide something if our
Right,
student is not doing well, we don't want them to. No, it has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with the philosophy of who is overseeing your homeschool. And you
right,
are as a parent, not the public school. And you can absolutely be academically strong in your homeschool. We are big advocates for that. So
right, right.
I have one
I'm
last question.
referring
Oh, go ahead.
specifically to people who have like Down syndrome or they have
Right,
severe learning disabilities where they're not going to pass that test. So
right,
that's what I'm
right.
talking about.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Do I need to submit my child's work to the public school? Who's going to check on and see if I'm following the law? So it seems like I'm getting more of these questions recently, and I think the demographic of who's homeschooling is kind of starting to change a little bit. We're seeing a lot more people coming out of the public school, people that haven't homeschooled from day one, don't really understand that the parent is in charge of their homeschool. They're still kind of expecting the public school to be in charge of your education and kind of
Mhm.
looking over your shoulder. And that's really not how that works. So once you pull that student out, you're the one in charge. And that can be, I agree, it can be kind of scary. I get it. There's really no one to blame when you're homeschooling. You're the one that's going to get blamed if something gets missed or if there's a gap in learning. And just I'll give a caveat. There's always going to be gaps. Public
Right.
schoolers have gaps. Pull up one thing I tell people to do often when they're feeling not a lot of confidence is to pull up the proficiency rates of their school district and look at how abysmal they are. Very often they are less than 50% proficient, most of their students on
Mhm.
key things like math and science and English language arts. It's really, really sad, the state of our public schools, even in North Dakota.
Mhm.
So, you can do at least as good of a job. We believe God has put you in a position to be the best parent of your child.
Mhm.
So yes, although that can be kind of scary sometimes for parents, it can also be really liberating too. Once you really grasp how great that is, that you are the one in charge, you get to decide, what your student is learning. You get to give them your values and the
Mhm.
things that you think are important. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, so I think it's a great thing, but I do understand that it can be scary for people. But no, you don't submit anything to the school. If you do get asked by the school to submit anything, contact us. We will make sure the school understands, the scope of the law. The only time that that's maybe okay is to determine eligibility. A school can ask you for grades, and that's
Right.
totally okay. Like if you have a
For
student in a sport
sports.
or something.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, but just I would wait until they ask you for something. Don't just volunteer it and then
Right.
keep it really simple. Keep it just to the basic subjects they're doing with like a letter grade or something. I think
Right.
that's sufficient. So, Amber, I think I hit most of the frequently asked questions. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the last thing a little bit that you're talking about, like the freedom of homeschooling and how scary it can be. But you do really need to embrace it. Homeschooling is the
Mhm,
very best vehicle for discipleship. And if you're not concerned about
mhm,
that, like if there's not a spiritual aspect to it that you're concerned about, it still is a really excellent method of education because you're giving that child one-on-one time that they would never get in the public school. Even the best teachers, which there are a lot of great teachers out there that pour their lives into their students, they're not going to give them that one on one time and they're not going to love your student as much as you do. So I was
mhm,
just visiting with somebody recently about this because he felt really ill equipped to homeschool his kids And I know him very well. And I said, look, you graduated from public school. So, and you feel like you don't know anything. So maybe you could try
Maybe get out of that system.
a different option, see how it goes.
Right. Right.
But you can
So I always, absolutely. And, that's why we're here to help people when they feel like they really can't do it and they need just that little boost of confidence. We're here to be cheerleaders to kind of get you set on the right track and help you with whatever's getting you stuck. You can call me anytime. You can text me. I will throw into Dr. Brian Ray is a researcher in the United States who's done some great research on homeschooling outcomes. And he has determined that homeschoolers usually end up around 15 to 25 percentile points above public school peers on standardized tests. And that is unrelated to, I referenced this earlier, unrelated to socioeconomic status. It's also unrelated to the education level of the parent.
Right.
So don't feel like, if you don't have a college degree, you can't possibly do this. Actually, the best person, anecdotally, like the best homeschoolers I know didn't go to college. Like they're awesome. Sure. So, and it also doesn't have anything to do with the amount of restriction in the state that you're homeschooling. So if you're in a really high restriction state, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be better at homeschooling. So it's unrelated to all of those things. So.
Right. Yes. And there was one other thing that I was going to add to that. Oh, if you have, if you feel like you just need extra help, we do have a service called Portals that does provide extra help for curriculum choices and just like getting going, homeschooling. I know that there's other, ways to go about that, but Portals is a good option for that. But I mean, there's, like Liz said, there's support groups, there's seasoned homeschool moms. You can reach out to the office. There's a lot of different ways to get help. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, please do reach out for help. Because if you just sit there by yourself, it's likely, as Liz said, that you're going to burn out and you're going to regret
for sure
choice. And
I will put in another. You did mention support groups. Most of the areas of our state do have a support group. You can find that. I'm just in the process of updating that list. I keep that updated. So you can be assured that the information on there is accurate. If you go on our website, it's its own page, support groups, and you'll see all of the different types of groups there are in the state with like a little biography of what they do. Sometimes there's just a contact person listed if there isn't a support group there. I would encourage you, like whoever is listening to this, maybe it's you, maybe you're the one, even if it's not right now, maybe in 5 years, we can plant a seed and be like, you know what, maybe I should start a support group in 5 years. Or, even now, I mean, really all it takes is another homeschooling family in your area to start a group. And you don't know like how that group could grow. So homeschooling is just so much better when you do it with like-minded people and you have that support. So find your people, they are out there. You just maybe need to be the one to like initiate that. So
right. And you don't feel overwhelmed by starting a support group either, because it doesn't have to look like, oh, we offer music classes and art classes. It could just be moms getting together and visiting. Right. You can start there and move to different things later, or you might not ever move to different things. It might just be a community group, and that's okay too. So
right. Because there's parent groups, for just support for parents. There's groups that are just for socializing your kids, getting together for field trips and fun activities.
Right.
There's other co-op groups where parents, take turns teaching different things that they're skilled in or have an interest in. So, it's really the sky's the limit. It can be Christian, it can be secular, it can be whatever you want it to be. So,
right. So yeah, I just wanted to thank Liz for taking time to talk to us on the podcast today. And if you think of other frequently asked questions or questions that you didn't hear on here, you can sure put them in the comment section, or you can reach out to Liz at the office.
Yep. And again, that number is 701-936-0356. I'm a texter too. So like if you just think of a quick question you want to shoot my way, just text me any time of day. I mean, it could be at night and you may or may not hear from me at night, but typically I usually answer those right away if they're quick. So yeah, just, or you can email me to E as in Elizabeth, and then Buck, BUCK, and then the letters ndhsa@gmail.com.
Right. And you can also message us through social media. The other thing
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to say too is that as a board, we will travel if you need us to come and like address a certain thing in a certain area. Like if you want us to come and talk to your support group, reach out to us and see who's in your area, and we can set that up too. So,
Yep. And we can also have somebody come and do like a little getting started
mhm.
homeschooling, little lecture, going over the century code and what the requirements are
Great,
and ways to choose curriculum, kind of a little bit of what we talked about tonight. So,
great. So, all right. Well, thanks
all
again.
right. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.